Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Yoni Assia, who's the co-founder and CEO of eToro. Yoni, it's great to have you back on the show.
It's always great being on the show.
Yoni, so I would love to start with maybe a quick overview of eToro for those who may not have heard of eToro, and then we'll talk about the big Twitter news.
Sure. eToro today is the largest social trading and investment network. We have 32 million registered users from 100 different countries who join into the social network where they can join millions of people that trade both crypto assets alongside stocks from 20 different capital markets. I founded eToro in 2007, so we've been here for a while, just celebrating 16 years. And the unique part of eToro is you can actually see what other people are trading, their actual portfolio allocation, their track record, and then you can automatically copy the most successful investors in the network. So we've seen over the last 2.5 years, we just spoke about it on the roller coaster of the markets, both the crypto markets and the stock markets. A lot of our popular investors have managed to actually beat the markets and continuously, even in a bad year like 2022, generate impressive returns.
Wow. And the social trading feature, were you guys the first to pioneer that? Because I remember us talking about it in 2020, and now obviously there's a natural partnership that comes with Twitter. Were you the first?
We were one of the first ones to really embed, if not maybe the first ones to really embed a complete trading and investment app into a complete social network where our customers can talk to one another, where you can actually see the trading activity of our customers. When we founded the company in 2007, what we quickly realized, well, our vision has always been to open the global markets and to make trading and investing simple, transparent for customers from all over the world. But it's not only about access, but it's about access to information. How do I know, not only making it simpler to buy a stock, but how do I know which stock to buy? How do I learn and educate myself about the markets? And then this was early days of Facebook and Twitter. And we said, you know what, let's just enable everybody to share. Back then people said, who's going to share their financial transactions online? Today, it's over 95% of our users who basically share all of their trading activity without obviously how much money they have on eToro, but their actual portfolios and trading activity on eToro. So we've always seen that synergy where through social networking, people can actually get access to faster information to more people and therefore learn and become better investors.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were certainly ahead of the curve because, to your point, now people share a lot about what their trades they're making, whether it be stocks or crypto, and there's online communities behind certain coins or stocks. I mean, you just look at what took place in 2020 with GameStop and all these different things. The dynamic has changed, and you have people crowdsourcing now, even against hedge funds, and it's just a very different dynamic and how things have changed.
I think definitely the last 3 years, both in crypto markets and the stock markets, have proved that the crowd has wisdom and power in the markets, and it's a big part again of the bigger theme, which is the rise of retail investors, the rise of the Gen Y and Gen Z retail investors coming into the markets and doing things very differently than how our older generations used to trade and invest in the markets while using social networks to basically share and gain power and knowledge over the markets.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the Twitter partnership. How did that come about, and what are the details?
As a former intelligence unit programmer, there's very little I can actually tell you. So there are some stuff that I can't disclose. But we've been working with Twitter for a while. So we've been a partner of Twitter, an advertising partner of Twitter since 2014. We've been using the Twitter platform to engage with both customers and obviously create dynamic and now AI generative ads to basically find out what people are interested in on Twitter, and then basically target those customers and tell them about what's happening in the markets, and connecting the eToro news feed to the Twitter news feeds through our users, basically sharing their insights about the markets. Then last year, with Twitter sort of moving towards Elon's Twitter, we saw that they decided to focus on finance more. So I think generally they looked at different segments of Twitter and started building sort of specific parts of the app towards different industries. We saw it in sports marketing from one end, and then finance on the other hand. And we started within the dialogue that actually, talked about their roadmap a bit before they actually, launched the cash tags, which enable you to see pricing information, which enables you now to, with a click, open your eToro account and trade directly on the markets on the eToro platform. And basically their vision was, okay, in finance, there is a real power, there is real advantage for the real-time aspect of Twitter. And they looked at both FinTwit, right, and crypto Twitter as sort of these emerging, very large communities talking about what's happening in the markets. And we started the dialogue with them, I think probably 6 to 9 months ago, about sort of how they view finance, the advantage of Twitter over other social networks in finance. And since, we cover the equities market in many, many different countries, from Europe to the UK, US, Australia, the Middle East, Asia. And we cover both capital markets, so both the stock markets as well as the crypto markets. It seemed natural that we would be able to partner and gradually build. And obviously, I share the same passion as Elon to crypto, and maybe not only to Dogecoin, but that's definitely the most entertaining scenario. And we've read quite a bit on sort of, Elon Musk's X. So excited to see where that goes as well.
Did you personally have conversations with Elon talking about the vision that he's looking to build for Twitter?
Unfortunately, not yet, but hopefully that will come soon as well.
Sure. Well, that's exciting. And I think it's like a natural partnership because of the social trading features that you guys have had for years and what Elon's trying to achieve with Twitter. Are there, I know you probably can't talk about certain things that are in the works, but are there plans to release new features in addition to what's already been implemented?
We obviously are very excited about this partnership, and we'll continue to sort of explore what can be done. I mean, for us, X, I think for everyone is still a mystery, right? How does Twitter become X? We're not in the loop quite yet, but it is interesting to sort of see how the company's progressing again towards various verticals, finance being one of them.
And then, part of the experience with eToro's integration, you mentioned if you search a certain ticker symbol, whether it be for crypto or stocks, eToro data will appear. And then folks can click off to go view that and trade on eToro.
Exactly. So every single asset, so we're gradually increasing also the universe, right? So a part of that was, let's start with the big stocks, then let's go into the various stock markets one by one. And let's cover more and more assets. But basically, it enables people to now both see the ticker price, and then click it and jump into the eToro feed and trade on eToro.
Oh, wow. That's pretty nice feature to have. And folks can just easily segue over. As far as your 2023 roadmap, this is obviously a a huge partnership. Are there other things that you guys have planned that you want to highlight?
We're very excited about our recent launch of eToro options in the US. So again, we're very much sort of on both sides, both in the stock markets and the crypto markets. We've always been. We are now we've expanded into DeFi through NFTs at first. So we connected our Web3 platform Delta, where we enable our customers to actually connect to from their hardware wallets to all of their exchanges to obviously their eToro account to see their crypto basically in all of their accounts, and now actually track and manage their NFT portfolios as well. So despite the fact that NFT markets have obviously hype has sort of shifted from NFTs to, I'd say, generative AI right now, we're still excited about the future of NFTs. And we have a lot of interesting, if we're talking about generative AI or Chat GPT and OpenAI, we are planning a lot of exciting new features now using these tools, where I have to say, like, I'm blown away from how much over the last 6 months advanced in AI. And when we started in our trading and CTO teams to start looking deeper into the technology and what can we actually build and launch, a lot of exciting stuff on the way.
So Yoni, a little bit of a branch off from what you just mentioned here. AI, incredible, lots of opportunities, going to open up a world of new things and new features and so forth. But obviously with that comes fakes, right? Images, music, different materials. Do you think blockchain is the counter solution to help with the verifiability in a world of, the ability to create a fake of something very quickly on using AI tools?
I think it's an interesting question. I would ask you, like, if you started a nice friendship with someone on Twitter and their AI, why would you verify? But it could be used. Do I see sort of that as the big intersection of AI and blockchain? Not necessarily. I think sort of the bigger picture is, in my view, is the combination of AI and unstoppable technology, which is like decentralized autonomous organizations. We've been able to build within the crypto space this amazing concept of decentralized technology, right? So you have Bitcoin, which is unstoppable. And still, when I talk to people about Bitcoin who are less immersed in the industry, they're like, but at some point a regulator will shut it down. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It can't be shut down. It's truly decentralized. And we've been able to invent something that works, and money that doesn't stop and works 24/7, and it's unstoppable. And I think the combination of that with what we're seeing now, I don't know how much you're familiar with the concepts of like auto GPT, of the autonomous agents. So now if you ask GPT, you can ask GPT, hey, write for me like a strategy to do something, to write me a strategy to make money. Just come up with ideas. And then you go, now take this idea and develop it. And he's going to write you a plan. And then you can go and say, okay, now write the code, right? So you iteratively can ask it to do more and more stuff. And now people are actually building autonomous agents. So basically a version of that does this automatically, like continuously. Like it invents its own missions. It actually creates them, it builds them, it checks them, it tests them, right? So that's very exciting from one end. But then eventually this all could be shut down, right? If you close your computer. But if we think of the concept of decentralized autonomous organizations in one end, and autonomous AI agents on the other hands, and we combine these, I think that's super interesting to think of, eventually AI running their own DAO, actually owning their own private keys, creating their own strategies. I think it's going to take a while, but I think it's very exciting to think about how, money becomes, from one end, unstoppable, right? Machine-based unstoppable. And then from the other end, can now actually generate capital strategies, etc. So I think it's going to be a very interesting combination of AI and blockchain.
Now you mentioned regulators and governments are not going to be able to stop this money. It's unstoppable money. But they are trying. We're seeing headwinds, at least here in the United States, where enforcement actions, right, without clear guidelines. You have different politicians, different people taking certain stances. What are your thoughts, and how's eToro navigating the environment, this environment of uncertainty? Once again, they can't stop crypto blockchain, but they're trying to maybe shake down the companies a little bit. How are you guys navigating that?
Sure. So we have always been a regulated financial services company. So we started eToro in 2007 before crypto, and we're regulated today in Europe, the UK, Australia, the US, in principal licenses now in Singapore, and the UAE. And we've always appreciated regulation in financial services. And I think the events of last year remind all of us the importance in some aspects of regulation, right? So when companies take the responsibility of taking customers' money, right, and then keeping that money safe, that's an important responsibility, and completely understood why financial regulators want to make sure that this industry is regulated. We're quite unique within the crypto industry because we started before crypto. And when we added crypto into our business in 2013, we actually embedded it as another asset, right? So we came out of our big geographic focus was Europe, but we offered our customers to trade US shares. So we were the first to offer fractional trading and commission-free stock trading in US shares for customers in Europe. And when we added crypto assets into the platform, our view was very similar. We treat this as a financial instrument. We make sure we segregate customer assets. The trading activity is all managed the same way as we trade US shares and other assets. So our view was always operating within basically the regulated railways. I think that part of companies like eToro offering people to trade and invest in various assets, including crypto, I think that part is going to get regulated, is already regulated in most places around the world. I think in the US, it's a bit harder because there are several regulators, and then there's this unique US question of what is a security, and different regulators for commodities, different rules for commodities, for securities, for currencies, right? In most other countries, you have one financial services regulated basically both this and sort of money transmitter licenses, right? So in the US, you have a bit of a different approach. Again, I think through the various rallies of crypto, we've seen the rallies and then the bursts, right? With Mt. Gox in 2000, and I think it was end of 13 or 14, with the ICO crazy market in 2017, and then popped with a lot of problems with scams and frauds, etc. And obviously with a lot of the, I'd say, crypto lenders collapse last year in 2022. So each of these cycles create new business models that then we do find out require some more oversight. And I think we're a part of that cycle right now where regulators are saying, hey, we need more oversight on companies providing eventually financial services to consumers. And I think eventually it'll be a part of regulation, and hopefully it won't too much delay innovation, because
right,
smart contracts, DeFi, the promise of NFTs, of lending against NFTs, of complex sort of structures around decentralized finance. I think it's amazing to think about the possibilities of what can be done in Web3 finance. And it's sometimes very hard to sort of try and fit the Web2 or the TradFi, right, the traditional finance world of regulation to this very new type of technology where it doesn't necessarily fit. And I think it's slowing down a bit the industry in various places. And eventually, and I said that to a central banker about, I think this was like 6-7 years ago, I met with one of the chairs of a central bank, and I asked him, and we talked about Bitcoin and about blockchain technology and about CDBCs. That was like 7 years ago. CDBCs was something that not everybody understood how eventually banks are going to issue their own central bank digital currencies. Now I think every central bank in the world understands they're eventually going to issue digital currencies to consumers. But when we spoke to that bank, it was a lot about economic questions, financial stability questions. And I asked how many people in the bank are actually computer scientists, understand how code works, understand how blockchain technology really works. And the fact is that in most central banks, you don't have a lot of necessarily computer scientists, right? At the top, if you think of like the startup ecosystem and the entire tech industry, and you look at a lot of the tech founders, they come from a computer sciences background, right? So if we are in the process of all assets becoming digital and the entire financial services industry being much more digital, fintech eating basically traditional finance, that eventually will also need central banks and regulators to think more like, I wouldn't say innovators, that's maybe harder, but more like computer scientists to figure out how can this technology eventually improve markets, improve efficiency, because undoubtedly 24/7 markets that are more open, markets that are fractionalized, fully auditable, is a huge leap in efficiency for the financial services markets, which is still quite archaic, with banks still operating on COBOL software written in the 80s, right? Maybe not all banks, but some banks. So I think, we are going to see advancement in regulation accepting these technologies, and we're going to see some parts of the ecosystem either get regulated or disappear.
Yeah, well put. Certainly, it's balanced regulations, protecting consumers, but not stifling innovation. And I think in the United States, we're still struggling with that, especially what happened last year. I understand FTX, Celsius, and all these big collapses. And some people feel a bit bamboozled with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. So there's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction against crypto. But I'm really surprised by the positive movements around the globe in the EU with the Mica regulations, and Singapore and these jurisdictions. In UAE, they seem to be getting things right, well balanced. Any thoughts on the Mica regulations? And I know that still has to go another round, but it was approved, I think, by certain parts of the government.
I think EU is going to become a very clear leader in digital assets because of the way they're not only advancing regulation quite fast, which is what Mica does. What's really interesting in the EU is it's a relatively decentralized approach, right? So we're regulated in the EU as financial services, and you can see that in the EU, certain countries specialize in different aspects of financial regulation. So you can find that small countries that specialize in e-money or brokerage, and suddenly now we're seeing the same with digital assets. You're seeing some countries that suddenly specialize at issuing digital bonds, some countries are sort of specializing in digital real estate, like Germany. And what happens is when an ecosystem like that in Europe, right, and many of these countries suddenly emerge, you get this startup ecosystem around sort of a specific specialty in digital assets that then can expand and passport to the entirety of Europe. So I think that will drive a lot of innovation. Hopefully, this will sort of accelerate digital assets and digital securities, right? So everybody in the industry, we're talking about securitization and digital securities, and how will that advance eventually real estate or private equity, or all types of sort of rights ownership. And I think because of the harmonization of MiCA in Europe, you're going to see different countries specialize in different parts of that ecosystem and then export it across Europe, which is what we've seen in financial services as well. So I'm optimistic at sort of the pace Europe is progressing with crypto regulation. It's essentially more digital asset regulation alongside crypto regulation.
Right, because beyond crypto assets, there's, like you said, tokenization of real estate, stocks, bonds, commodities, and these different things. I know we got a few more minutes. Given eToro's pedigree in social trading and social connection with finances, are you working on any type of metaverse around that, where people can, and you may not be able to tell me about your plans, but I figured I'd ask.
So first, we were very, very excited about NFTs last year, as we developed the ability through the Delta app to track NFTs and manage your NFT portfolios. And actually, we also have our own. You can actually go to eToro.eth. We bought quite a bit of a lot of the top trending NFT, both collections and real estate. So we bought a lot of land in the metaverse, and we did plan some activations of sort of, okay, now we bought this real estate, whether it's in Decentraland, whether it's in the other side, in various sort of metaverses. So the way I view the metaverse, it's more around sort of these communities, and the fact that these communities suddenly have land, right? So they have virtual land and they have their NFTs and the value of their NFTs. I think that, where we are in the market from hype cycle point of view, it's going to take a bit longer. And what I saw last time in the cycle of NFTs, which surprised me, was maybe not the first time, but when I felt a bit old, is like a lot of the very enthusiastic NFT collectors were in their early 20s. And eventually, when we think of the metaverse, I think it's really about, it's not Gen Y anymore, where our core business is. And maybe it's even younger than Gen Z. I think it's going more towards Gen Alpha. When I look at my kids, right, and they're every day in Roblox, I think that's where we're going to see that generational shift. So I'm a big believer in online communities and meeting people online and creating and fostering these relationships and eventually building that place around it. But I think it's going to take time. But again, I'm still a Twitter guy. I haven't even, I haven't progressed from, the Twitter world to the Instagram world to the TikTok world. So I think every generation has their own appetite, and every person has their own interests. I'm more of a text read and write person rather than an images or videos person.
So final question here is a wrap-up question. If you could, let's say, you decided, I changed my mind. I'm gonna create my own metaverse. What would the theme be? Where would Yoni go to?
Probably capital markets, trading and investing, creating that place where you can just go to a company and ask, why should I buy your shares, and have somebody from that company explain to you what they do and why they do and why their business model is good. Because eventually, that's what investors want, right? We want to understand what to invest in, but how can you as an investor today talk to somebody from the Ethereum Foundation? Probably hard. Can you talk to somebody from Intel or Google to figure out what to do, right? So I think that connectivity within the metaverse, I think, is super interesting, like bringing in the issuers of assets and enabling them to connect directly with interested investors.
See, that's a great idea. As an investor myself, I would love to do that. So I think that's something eToro could probably work on. uh,
Thank you very
Yoni,
much.
pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to see the new features and things that roll out with Twitter and future updates this year as well. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very much.